Gilgamesh. In the Palladian star system, we see ourselves as information gatherers for Prime Creator. Prime Creator is, and we are sent out to gather experience in time and space. You may judge me by the standards of your world, but I did not judge myself. I was simply living and learning. If one experience was not fulfilling, I moved on to another. Prime Creator manifests as a womb matrix we call the Mother Goddess, and from her many other sources of creations are brought forth. A multitude of higher beings form thought. These thoughts become sound, and sound in turn flows out to its own level of frequency and manifests its realities. My adventures were part of the movement of all that had been created before me. I come from a line. I am Prime Creator, the Mother Goddess, and my ancient ancestors from other dimensions and star systems. I am part of Anu and Antu. I am Enlil and Ninhursag, and I carry my own mother and father within me, the consciousness of all that came before me. I express in my power to create. In that time on Terra, I did not see that my actions could harm the Lulas and their future generations, you. I certainly did not know such harm would flow back into my life and build the wall. After Anu gave me the right to grant kingship, I commuted back and forth between Europe and the Indus Valley. Grains and other commodities flowed abundantly along my trade routes. My priestesses became richer by the day, and everyone was happy. Still, I had no husband. I was in the same boat as my great Aunt Nin. There was no one suitably placed for me to marry. Over the years, I watched Ninhursag become more and more withdrawn and rigid, and I did not want to end up like her. I'm not the old maid type, and I felt like a loose cannon on deck. I was so beautiful and only a little ruthless. What was I to do? In order to deal with this little problem, I resolved to combine the rituals of kingship and sacred marriage in this lovely ceremony. The future king became my husband for one night. The temple was covered with flowers and bathed in candlelight. The scent of the flowers and the sounds of sweet music filled the temple halls. I was dressed in silks, crowned with a golden tiara, and led by the priests and priestesses to a sacred bed where my beloved was waiting. I had many children in this manner and created many royal lineages from these ceremonies. I, who had no real husband of my own race, could enjoy the wedding ceremony over and over. The sacred marriage ceremony was very popular with the Lulas. These ceremonies made them love me, and thus I gained power over the cities. This custom of having children with the Lulas was continually practiced by the men in the family of Anu. Anki couldn't begin to count how many lovers he enjoyed with the number of children he fathered. My father Nana and my brother Utu were no different. I merely formalized a common practice into an elaborate ritual, and the sacred marriage ceremony made me a popular favorite with the Lulas. The ritual of the sacred marriage also allowed me to create men powerful enough to be interesting to me. I taught them wisdom, knowledge, and magic. The surest way to transfer these frequencies is the act of sexual union performed with the highest consciousness and greatest focus. I am a natural at this sort of thing, and many men benefited from these initiations. The DNA of the Lulas was strengthened and amplified by my genetic infusion. Unknowingly, I also tied myself into the lineages of thousands of human beings and thus their future lives. My genes wove themselves into a river of people without my knowing. I was becoming a part of them. Now, how is it you are sitting around mildly bored, wanting something exciting to happen, and by synchronicity you are drawn into a new world without any conscious thought of where it will lead? The promise of fresh new experiences draws you, and the fabric of time catches you in her web. So I likewise was forever drawn into Terra's web and the lives of her inhabitants. My brother Utu was quite happily married to his wife Aya, and I could occasionally visit them. Utu and I were always very close, and I know he loves me, but he was so busy with all the shuttles going back and forth from Terra to the space station that we barely had time to see each other. Aya was all wrapped up in her children, the schools, and their clothes. Ninurta and his wife, Gula, were the same. Gula only talked about her children. Ninurta had so many duties that he and Gula did not even see each other that frequently. I admired these women for their devotion to their children, but it just wasn't enough for me. I couldn't wait to get back to the temples and check the commodity reports. The sacred marriage ceremony gave me the freedom to pursue my business interests, along with the pleasures of many husbands and many children. My sacred marriages attracted men from all over Terra. I would watch the men who came into the temple and make inquiries about their abilities and intelligence, and I became accustomed to picking out the best as they pleased me. Then one day I met a man who rejected my advances, Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh had been made 5th ruler of the dynasty in Europe by my brother, Utu. I was always on business at that time in the Indus Valley, and Utu was anxious to grant kingship to Gilgamesh. Utu felt a strong affection for him because Gilgamesh was of Utu's lineage. Utu had at one time felt a strong affection for one of my temple priestesses, and their union had produced a male who was so desirable that he, in turn, mated with a pure Nibirian lady. Their son was Gilgamesh, and he claimed himself to be 2/3 god and 1/3 human, a claim he felt gave him certain rights. Gilgamesh was exceedingly handsome, what you would call a hunk, and he was very popular with the people. Gilgamesh was loved by all, and Utu doted on his hero, King, who carried my brother's blood in his veins. Highly intelligent, Gilgamesh began to learn all that he could about the history of Terra and the family of Anu. The more he learned, the more he became obsessed with the thought of his mortality. Gilgamesh did not want to die. After all, he reasoned he was 2/3 god and should therefore be immortal like Utu and the other gods. He begged his mother and his grandfather, Utu, to help him. Utu basically told him to forget it. The other gods would not allow it, and Gilgamesh should be enjoying the time allotted to him. Dismayed and depressed, Gilgamesh began to drink heavily. He went on binges, eating, drinking, copulating, and challenging any and all to fight him. Gilgamesh was desperate to distract himself from the fear of death. His erratic behavior and violent outbursts disrupted the normal flow of life in Europe. The gods felt that something must be done to calm Gilgamesh down. Gilgamesh needed a friend, a peer in the wilderness that lived a man named Enkidu. Enkidu was one of Enki's genetic experiments and a match in physical strength for Gilgamesh. The gods decided to capture Enkidu as a companion for Gilgamesh. Enkidu was still wild in his nature and in the innocent state of telepathy with the animals of the steppes and forests. In order to capture Enkidu, the gods sent one of the priestesses to seduce him. Enkidu had never seen anything quite like this lovely woman. Enthralled by her enticing body, he was overcome with lust and copulated with her again and again. For 7 days and 7 nights in a trance of ecstatic passion, Enkidu lost himself in the sea of her beauty. When he was finally satiated, he looked around for his animal friends, but they no longer knew him, and as he attempted to come near them, they fled his presence, running in fear. Enkidu was forever changed. Feeling lost and alone, with nowhere to go, poor Enkidu timidly followed the priestesses into Europe, where he was given to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh and Enkidu began their friendship by wrestling each other, testing the depths of each other's strength. When Enkidu proved he was a match for Gilgamesh, the two bonded in brotherhood. Gilgamesh shared his fear of death with his new friend Enkidu. Enkidu was moved to tears by Gilgamesh's self-pity and spoke of a place he had come upon with the gazelles in the land of the cedars, in the secret abode of the gods. There Gilgamesh could demand immortality. A terrible monster named Humbaba had been created by Enlil to stand guard in his domain, the land of the cedars. Enkidu told Gilgamesh they would have to fight to the Humbaba to gain entrance into the abode. Excited by the prospect of a new challenge, the two set off in high spirits. The abode of the gods exists in a different dimension than Terra, but may be entered through a time portal in the land of the cedars. Terra vibrates at a different frequency than Nibiru, and we can only enter the vibration of Terra through such time portals, as they are the gates to travel between dimensions. The Humbaba was a holographic monster concealing a deadly weapon which guarded this entrance. We, as Palladians, must also return to our own time frequency regularly, or we will age at the same rate as humans, because 1 year on Nibiru is equivalent to 3,600 years on Terra. We appear as immortals to you. Utu and I watch for the sky as Gilgamesh and Enkidu approached the time portal and began to attack the Humbaba. We were so impressed by their courage, we decided to play with the hologram and let them think they had beheaded the thing. Afterwards, we would usher them back to Europe with no harm done. Thinking the Humbaba safely dead, Gilgamesh and Enkidu lay exhausted by a stream. Gilgamesh was all sweaty from the battle, and he took off his clothes to wash. Well, that did it. He was so beautiful, with his long black hair and a chiseled body glistening with manliness, that I was overwhelmed with desire. I wanted him. From my ship hovering over him, I cried out, "Oh, Gilgamesh, I long to feel your strong arms around my slim waist and to delight in the sweet joys of your manhood." I also offered him gold and lands, power and fame, the usual. You can imagine my shock when he refused. He even insulted me, going on and on about how I'll turn this man into a frog and that one into a wolf. He raved on and on terrible things about me, that I was like a shoe that bit the owner's foot, and other rude insults. It wasn't my fault that I outlived all the men who were my lovers. He even offered to recount the list of my previous lovers' names. No one dared even to speak to me in this repulsive manner, and hell has no fury like a woman's scorn. I wasn't putting up with this from any man, even if he had been 2/3 God. I went straight to Anu and began to complain. Luckily, Antu was there. Anu tried to calm me down, but he also pointed out that what Gilgamesh had said was partially true. Well, perhaps I had lost interest rather quickly in a few of my lovers, but I couldn't remember turning anyone into a frog. Besides, I am Innana, Queen of Heaven, beloved of Anu, and no one talks to me like that. Sweetly and slowly I begged Anu to give me a weapon to trounce Gilgamesh with a big radiation weapon. And if Anu wouldn't give me this weapon, I rashly threatened to unleash all sorts of astral terrors from other dimensions. Anu knew I was just trying to convince him to appease me and give me what I wanted. Anu reminded me that use of such a powerful radiation weapon would poison the crops. He wondered if I had enough grain and storage for my people, and when I told him that I did, he gave in. I now see that occasionally I did have a foul temper. This time my brother Utu was completely against me. Gilgamesh was his blood and Utu dearly loved the boy. Utu arranged to have the radiation weapon malfunction, which must have secretly pleased Anu. I was furious at having my plans for revenge wrecked, and I made a formal complaint. Anu conferred with his son Enlil, who decided that Gilgamesh and Enkidu must be punished for attacking the Humbaba, thus defying the weapons of the gods. Anu suggested death, but Enlil wasn't willing to see Gilgamesh die, and he compromised by offering to kill Enkidu alone. Enkidu wasn't up to having his death negotiated so coldly, and he fell into a coma. While poor Enkidu lay ill and unconscious, Gilgamesh became even more obsessive over his own death. Gilgamesh took to weeping and wailing his own fate, barely noticing his sick friend. This complete narcissistic selfishness convinced me that Gilgamesh really was one of us, a true child of the family of Anu. The gods, in their compassion, took pity on Enkidu and commuted his death sentence to life spent slaving in the mines, a fate from which there was no return. No Lula ever returned from Arakashal's underworld. Luckily, Enkidu, as for Gilgamesh, lucky Enkidu. As for Gilgamesh, his increased desperation made him decide to press his grandfather Utu for further help. He became more determined than ever to seek the immortality of the gods, something many humans have similarly desired.